Elena sat alone in her living room, the dim glow of the lamp casting long shadows across the walls, and the soft ticking of the clock filling the silence that had become her constant companion over the years. The house felt empty in ways that no amount of cleaning or rearranging could fix, echoing with the memories of laughter, love, and moments that now belonged only to the past. She wrapped her hands around a warm cup of tea, trying to find comfort in its heat, but the warmth barely touched the hollowness in her chest. She thought about the early mornings when her husband used to brew coffee for her and Lucas, the way he would smile, a small curve of lips that could brighten the dullest day, and now the memory itself was almost painful, a reminder of the absence that filled every corner of her life. Lucas, her 12-year-old son, had always been the bright spot in her world, the one little constant that made the heartbreak bearable. Yet tonight, even his usual energy seemed muted, replaced by a quiet tension that she couldn't understand. She had seen him running around after school, telling stories, laughing at jokes, and yet now he stood in the doorway, a hesitant expression on his face that made her heart clench. Elena's thoughts drifted back to the morning, the small arguments they had, the little things that always piled up like invisible bricks in her mind, each one heavier than the last. She remembered waking up to a cold house, sunlight spilling across the floorboards, and feeling the loneliness settle like a heavy blanket she couldn't shake off. She wondered if this was what it always felt like for her now, the constant low hum of longing mixed with fear of the unknown. Her life had become a rhythm of routine, of keeping Lucas happy while hiding the cracks in her own heart, and it was exhausting. Tonight, she thought, might be different, though she didn't know why, but a strange sense of anticipation had settled in her chest, a flutter she couldn't explain. The clock ticked on, each second sharper than the last, echoing the way her thoughts raced. She felt the weight of years pressing on her, the memories of love lost, of laughter gone, and of the small daily moments that no one noticed but that shaped her life completely. Elena's eyes wandered to the family photos on the walls, smiling faces frozen in time, a silent reminder that life had once been full of warmth and closeness. She saw Lucas's picture, the one taken last year at the park, his face glowing with happiness, and she felt a pang of guilt for the time she had been too tired, too lost in her own sorrow to fully appreciate him. Her mind drifted to the early days of motherhood, when every moment felt like a discovery, every smile a victory, every tear a lesson. Those days felt so far away now, like they belonged to someone else's story, yet the love for her son remained as vivid as ever, a beacon that kept her grounded even when the world seemed gray and unforgiving. She sipped her tea again, this time noticing the faint tremble in her hands, and she realized how long it had been since she allowed herself to simply be still, to feel without fear of the weight that followed. The sound of footsteps broke through her reverie, soft yet deliberate, and her heart leaped in her chest. Lucas appeared in the doorway, holding something in his small hands, and for a moment she didn't know what to say. His eyes were wide, filled with a seriousness that contrasted sharply with his usual playful demeanor. He didn't speak immediately, and the silence between them stretched uncomfortably, a tension that made Elena's pulse quicken. "Mom!" he whispered, barely audible, and the single word hit her harder than she could have imagined. She leaned forward, instinctively drawn to him, trying to understand the gravity in his tone. The room felt smaller suddenly, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to listen, and the air seemed heavier, charged with an emotion she couldn't yet name. She watched Lucas take a step closer, hesitancy in every movement, and her heart twisted with a mixture of fear and love. He stopped a few feet away, holding the small object tightly, and she noticed the faint quiver in his hands, a mirror of the unspoken tension that coursed through the room. Elena wanted to reach out, to comfort him, but words failed her, caught somewhere between instinct and uncertainty. The clock continued to tick, the sound a sharp reminder that time was moving relentlessly forward, and she realized with a jolt that this moment might change everything, though she didn't yet know how. She thought of the nights she had spent lying awake, replaying memories, imagining conversations that never happened, and now here was a moment she hadn't imagined, a conversation she hadn't anticipated. Lucas's eyes held a depth that startled her, an understanding beyond his years, and she wondered how a child could carry such weight without breaking. "Mom, I know things have been hard," he whispered, his voice gaining a fragile strength, "and I know you're sad sometimes, but I need to tell you something." Elena felt a lump form in her throat, her heart tightening as tears threatened to spill. She nodded slightly, encouraging him without realizing it. As if by some unspoken instinct, she knew that whatever he was about to say mattered more than anything else in the world. Lucas took a deep breath, and Elena could see the courage it took for him to speak, the way he held himself steady despite the tremble in his voice. The room was silent except for their breathing, a quiet rhythm that matched the tension in her chest. She realized then that her son had grown in ways she hadn't fully noticed, that his small frame carried a wisdom that came from love and observation, from nights spent watching her struggle and mornings spent trying to make her smile. Elena reached out and took his hand gently, feeling the warmth of his skin, the reassurance of his presence, and she knew that whatever he was about to say, it was meant to heal, to bridge a distance she hadn't known could be crossed. "Mom," he whispered again, a little louder this time. "I think you deserve to be happy, really happy. And I want to help you." Elena's chest tightened, tears spilling freely now, a mixture of sorrow and gratitude flooding her senses. She had never expected such words from a child, such insight and care wrapped in the innocence of youth. Her mind raced, thinking of the years she had spent alone, the moments she had allowed herself to grieve quietly, the nights when she had thought she would never feel joy again. And yet here he was, her son, offering not just words, but a bridge back to life, to laughter, to warmth. She hugged him tightly, feeling the small, firm weight of his body against hers, the steady heartbeat beneath her ear. And for a moment, the world outside disappeared entirely. The darkness in her mind, the endless replay of loss, was softened by this unexpected tenderness, this quiet, powerful act of love. She realized she had underestimated him, underestimated the way children observe, understand, and care in ways adults often forget. Elena pulled back slightly, wiping her tears, and looked at him with a mix of awe and disbelief. "Lucas," she began, her voice trembling. I don't know what to say." He smiled faintly, a small knowing smile, and said, "You don't have to say anything. Just promise me you'll try to smile again. Promise me you'll let yourself be happy." Elena felt her heart ache with a strange blend of pain and hope, the weight of the past pressing against the possibility of the future. She nodded, unable to speak, letting the tears flow freely, each one washing away a little of the heaviness she had carried alone for so long. Lucas squeezed her hand gently, and Elena felt a warmth spread through her, a fragile but undeniable sense of connection that she hadn't realized she had missed so desperately. The room seemed to breathe with her, the walls no longer looming but softening, the shadows receding slightly as if acknowledging the shift that had just occurred. Elena knew, even in that moment, that nothing would ever be quite the same again, that the whisper of her son's words had planted a seed, a quiet promise of something more, something she had long feared was impossible. And as they sat there, hand in hand, the soft glow of the lamp illuminating their faces, Elena felt the first flicker of hope she had allowed herself in years, a gentle spark that whispered of love, of life, and of a future that might finally bring warmth back into the corners of her heart. Lucas took a small step closer to his mother, Elena, holding her gaze with an intensity that made her heart ache and flutter at the same time, and she realized that tonight, something was shifting between them, something delicate and powerful that went beyond words and stretched into the quiet spaces of the room, filling the air with anticipation, warmth, and unspoken understanding. "Mom," he whispered again, his voice carrying a fragility that tugged at her heart. "I see the nights when you sit alone and stare into space, when the house feels too quiet, and your eyes look like they're carrying the world." Elena felt her throat tighten, her hands trembling slightly around the cup she had abandoned on the side table, and she wondered how her young son could notice such things, how he could see the cracks she had worked so hard to hide behind smiles, routines, and long hours spent keeping herself busy, and yet here he was, observing, understanding, caring in ways that left her breathless and vulnerable. Lucas continued, his words spilling out in a soft rush. "I know you try to hide it, Mom. I know you pretend everything is okay, but I can see your heart, and it's heavy, and I wish I could take some of that weight for you." Elena felt tears welling in her eyes as she took a tentative step toward him, reaching for his hand again, feeling the warmth and solidity of his small fingers against hers, and she marveled at the courage it took for a child to speak such truths with honesty and love, at the depth of empathy that seemed almost beyond his years, and a mixture of pride and heartbreak swelled in her chest, leaving her both awed and painfully aware of how much she had been carrying alone. She knelt down slowly, bringing her face closer to his, trying to find the right words, though she realized that words were unnecessary when the quiet love between them spoke more profoundly than any sentence could, and she allowed herself to simply feel the moment, letting the rush of emotion wash over her in waves of longing, gratitude, and tender relief. Lucas's eyes shimmered with a quiet determination as he said, "Mom, I want you to be happy. Not just a little happy, not just a smile that hides the sadness, but really happy. The kind of happiness that makes your heart light and your laughter come naturally. The kind that makes the world feel gentle again." Elena's chest tightened as she felt the truth of his words pierce through her carefully guarded walls, each syllable like a key turning slowly in a lock she hadn't realized was there. And for the first time in a long time, she felt the stirrings of possibility, the gentle pull of hope that suggested life might still hold more than memories, grief, and quiet nights filled with sorrow. She reached out and cupped his face in her hands, her thumbs brushing against the warmth of his cheeks, and she whispered, "Lucas, I don't know how to do that anymore. I've forgotten how to feel happy without fear." His small hands rested on hers, steady and reassuring, and he said softly, "You don't have to know how yet. I'll help you. We'll find it together." Elena felt a lump form in her throat, unable to speak for a moment, overwhelmed by the weight and simplicity of the gesture. The power of a child's love to pierce through layers of grief and fear and open the door to something she had thought lost forever. And she realized in that instant that happiness wasn't a distant dream, it could be found in small acts, in words whispered in the quiet of the night, in moments of connection that reminded her she was still alive and still capable of feeling deeply. She held him close, inhaling the faint scent of his hair, feeling the steady beat of his heart, and she remembered all the mornings she had rushed through, too busy to notice the way his small hands held hers, the way his laughter could lift the heaviest weight, the way his presence alone had been a reminder that life could be tender even in its hardest moments. Lucas pulled back slightly, his eyes searching hers, and said, "Mom, there's someone I think you should meet. Someone kind, someone who makes you smile in a way that's real, the way Dad used to. I want you to see that it's okay to feel something again. That love can come back, even if it's different, even if it's new." Elena's breath hitched, a mixture of shock, fear, and curiosity swirling in her chest, and she shook her head slightly, unable to fully believe that her child could suggest such a thing, yet touched beyond measure by his understanding, his insight, and his quiet push toward life and possibility. She thought about the long years of sorrow, the lonely nights, the endless cycles of waking up to a quiet house, and she realized how much she had closed herself off from the world, from life, from joy, and yet here was Lucas gently, bravely, insisting that she allow herself to feel, to hope, to live again, and the weight of that insistence felt both terrifying and liberating. "Lucas," she began, her voice trembling, I don't know if I can do that. I've been alone for so long, I don't know if I remember how to." He shook his head softly, cutting her off gently. "You don't have to know yet, Mom. You only have to take the first step. One step. I'll be with you. We can do it together." Elena felt tears spill freely down her cheeks as she nodded, her hands gripping his, and she realized that the path forward was unclear, fraught with fear, but also shimmering with possibility, and the courage of her small son gave her strength she hadn't known she possessed. They stayed like that for a long moment, simply holding each other, breathing together, letting the quiet of the night wrap around them like a protective blanket, and Elena felt her heart begin to open, slowly, tenderly, to the notion that life might still offer her beauty, love, and unexpected joy, that the shadow of the past could coexist with the promise of tomorrow. Lucas finally broke the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, I love you, and I want you to be happy. That's all I want." Elena's heart swelled with emotion, a mix of overwhelming love, gratitude, and aching hope, and she held him tighter, letting the tears flow, the sadness and the hope mingling in a bittersweet harmony that left her both shaken and comforted, knowing that this night, this whisper, this small act of courage from her son, had shifted something inside her, had begun to heal the parts of her heart she thought would never mend. She looked into his eyes, shining with quiet determination and innocent wisdom, and realized that he had given her more than words. He had given her a bridge back to life, a reason to feel again, a gentle push toward hope and possibility, and she knew that the journey ahead would be uncertain, sometimes frightening, but filled with moments like this, moments of connection, love, and quiet revelation that made the risk worth taking. The lamp flickered slightly, casting shadows that danced across the walls, mirroring the flicker of emotions in her heart, and Elena felt a warmth spread through her chest, fragile yet undeniable. The kind of warmth that comes from love, understanding, and the simple, profound truth that even in the darkest nights, light can return. Sometimes in the form of the smallest hands holding yours, the gentlest words whispered with care, the unwavering belief of someone who loves you unconditionally. And she realized in that quiet, perfect moment that her life was about to change, that the night had already begun to alter the course of her heart, and that whatever came next, she would face it with courage, hope, and the love of the child who had reminded her that happiness was not lost, only waiting to be found again. Elena felt a strange mix of fear, hope, and curiosity swirling in her chest as she considered her son's words, the small, earnest plea from Lucas lingering in the air like a fragile promise, and she realized that tonight was not just another night of routine or quiet reflection, but a turning point, a moment that demanded courage she hadn't summoned in years, the kind of courage that comes from the heart, from love, from a deep desire to reclaim life and joy after so long spent in shadows and silence. And she breathed in slowly, trying to steady herself, feeling the pulse of possibility quicken as her mind raced with thoughts both terrifying and exhilarating. Imagining the life she had left behind, the love she had lost, and the chance, no matter how uncertain, to open her heart again in ways she had thought impossible. As Lucas looked up at her with a seriousness far beyond his age, his small hand still resting in hers as if anchoring her to the moment, giving her strength, a reminder that she was not alone, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the deepest wisdom, and she realized she wanted to honor that wisdom, to trust it, to let it guide her into the unknown. Even if that unknown felt dangerous, even if it required risking the fragile safety she had built around herself over the years, because she understood now that safety without love, without connection, was emptiness, and she had tasted enough emptiness to know that she could no longer ignore the possibility of feeling again, of opening her heart to life, to laughter, to moments of joy that might come unexpectedly, tenderly, like a whisper in the dark that gradually grows into a melody she could follow without fear. And she looked at Lucas and said, her voice trembling, "Lucas, you're right. I don't want to stay in the shadows anymore. I want to try, but I don't know where to start." And he smiled softly, his eyes bright with encouragement and the quiet pride of someone who knows they've planted a seed in fertile soil, the seed of hope. And he squeezed her hand gently, saying, "One step at a time, Mom. You don't have to do it all at once. Just let life come to you. Trust it. Let it surprise you." And she nodded, feeling the tension in her chest ease slightly as if the weight she had been carrying for years was shared now, distributed across the small but powerful presence of her son. And she realized that even the act of agreeing, even the act of allowing herself to imagine a life with possibility, was a victory, a subtle but profound reclaiming of herself. And she wondered what that life might look like, what joy might feel like, and if she could allow herself to feel attraction, warmth, curiosity toward someone again, someone who might enter her life unexpectedly, bringing laughter, comfort, and a quiet reassurance that love could return in new forms, different from the past but no less real, no less capable of healing. And she felt a flutter of excitement mixed with nervousness, her pulse quickening, remembering moments from years ago when love had felt effortless and full of light. And she wondered if it was possible to find that feeling again, to rediscover herself in the midst of new connection, to feel the thrill of laughter shared across a table, a smile exchanged in a hallway, the simple touch of a hand that brings calm and curiosity all at once. And Lucas's voice brought her back to the present, gentle but insistent. "Mom, you deserve to feel that, to live that. I want you to meet someone who can remind you of the joy you've forgotten. Someone who sees you, truly sees you, and makes your heart feel safe enough to open again." And Elena's mind raced with hesitation, questions, fears, and yet a spark of anticipation ignited in her chest, a flutter that made her pulse catch, because even as she feared disappointment, rejection, or the resurgence of old pain, she could not deny that the idea of love, of human connection, of laughter and gentle intimacy, felt like a long-lost treasure buried beneath layers of grief. And she wanted, more than she had wanted in years, to reach for it, to take the chance, to let herself step into the unknown, guided by the small but unwavering wisdom of her son. And she pictured herself walking into a cafe, a park, a quiet street, and seeing someone whose smile made her chest lift, whose words could make her laugh again, whose presence could calm the restless ache she carried. And she realized that just imagining this brought a strange warmth to her heart, A fragile but undeniable reminder that life still held moments worth risking, worth feeling and worth exploring, and she squeezed Lucas's hand, grateful beyond words for his courage, for his insight, for the gentle nudge that had begun to untangle the chains of fear and sorrow she had wrapped around herself for too long, and she whispered softly, I think I can try. And Lucas's face lit up with quiet triumph, his small grin radiating joy and relief, and she felt a surge of love for him, a gratitude so profound it almost overwhelmed her, knowing that this child, with his innocence, empathy and wisdom, had given her more than advice, more than encouragement, more than hope. He had given her a path forward, a reason to believe in herself again, a reason to embrace life, to open her heart, to trust that love could return, even if in a different form than she remembered, and she imagined the day she might meet him, the man her son envisioned, someone gentle, kind, and capable of understanding the depth of her heart without judgment. And the thought made her stomach flutter with nervous excitement, a sensation that reminded her she was alive, that she could feel, that she could long, that she could hope, and she allowed herself to lean into that feeling, to savor it, to let it ripple through her body as a signal that change was possible, that she could step forward even with trembling legs, that she could embrace new beginnings even after heartbreak. And she reflected on the nights she had spent alone, crying quietly, fearing she would never feel joy again, and she realized that this moment, this quiet conversation, this connection with her son, had begun to shift something fundamental inside her, opening her heart to experiences she had long denied herself. And she felt a rush of gratitude for the small but powerful act of love that had come from someone so young, someone who had the clarity of heart to see her pain and the courage to encourage her toward light. And as she stood there, holding his hands, looking into his eyes, she felt a mix of awe, wonder and anticipation, the sensation of possibility weaving through her chest like sunlight through clouds, and she knew that the next step, meeting someone new, allowing herself to feel attraction, curiosity, maybe even romance again, was a path fraught with uncertainty but rich with potential, and she felt ready to take it, if only with the guidance, support and love of Lucas, who had reminded her that life could be tender, that love could be gentle, that joy could be found again if she had the courage to seek it. And she imagined walking into a world where laughter, connection, warmth and human touch could coexist with memories, grief and the lessons of the past. And she realized that this duality, this balance of remembering and moving forward, was not only possible but necessary, that honoring the past while embracing the future was a gift she could give herself. And Lucas, with his small hand in hers, had given her that gift tonight, whispering truth, love and possibility into the quiet of their home. And as the night deepened, the shadows softened, the house felt lighter, and Elena, for the first time in years, felt a spark of excitement, a quiet flutter of anticipation, a tender sense of hope that perhaps life had more in store for her than she had dared imagine. And she vowed silently to herself that she would take that step, one small, careful step at a time, toward happiness, toward connection, toward love, knowing that the path was uncertain, but also knowing that with her son by her side, with his love and guidance, she could navigate it. And as they sat together in the quiet room, the lamp casting a warm, golden glow over them, Elena felt the stirring of a new chapter, fragile, beautiful and full of possibilities, and she knew that whatever came next, the whisper of her son's heart, the courage in his words, and the gentle push he had given her tonight would always remain with her, guiding her, reminding her, and encouraging her to trust in life, to trust in love, to trust in herself. And she finally allowed herself to believe that happiness, true happiness, could return, one step at a time. The following evening, Elena felt a mix of excitement, fear, and curiosity swirling in her chest as she prepared to step outside the comfort of her quiet home, to meet someone her son had gently suggested, someone who might remind her of joy, laughter, and warmth that she had thought lost forever. And though her palms were clammy and her heart raced with nervous anticipation, she felt a small but steady courage growing within her, fueled by Lucas's unwavering support and his quiet insistence that she deserved to feel happiness again. And she took a deep breath, smoothing the folds of her dress and adjusting her hair, feeling the weight of years of sorrow mixed with hope pressing against her chest, a strange but welcome tension that made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. And she stepped out into the crisp night air, feeling it brush against her cheeks, carrying with it the scent of possibility, the quiet thrill of something unknown waiting just ahead. And she reminded herself that life had taught her to be cautious, to protect her heart, but also to recognize moments where courage was necessary, moments that might open doors she had long feared to approach. And as she walked toward the small cafe where Daniel was waiting, she felt the soft flutter of anticipation, the pulse of excitement that came from imagining new connection, warmth, and laughter. And she pictured what it might be like to meet someone who could make her smile again without forcing it, who could see her heart, her pain, and her joy, and accept it all without judgment. And the thought made her stomach tingle with a combination of fear and delight, a sensation she realized she had almost forgotten, buried under the weight of years spent alone, worrying, grieving, and shielding herself from possibility. And as she pushed open the door, the warm glow of the cafe enveloped her, soft lights reflecting on polished wooden tables, the low hum of conversation filling the air. And there he was, Daniel, standing near the counter. Gentle, open expression on his face, eyes that seemed to hold stories of his own, a smile that was kind and inviting, and for a moment, Elena felt breathless, caught between disbelief and wonder, her heart skipping a beat, the nervous excitement in her chest making it hard to stand still. And he approached her slowly, his presence calm, reassuring, yet somehow thrilling, a contrast to the quiet of her empty house and the long years of solitude she had endured. And he extended his hand with a smile that made her feel seen, noticed, appreciated, as though she had been invisible for far too long, and she accepted it, feeling the warmth of his hand against hers, a connection that felt oddly familiar and comforting. And as they walked to a small table near the window, she felt the tension in her shoulders ease, the nervous fluttering in her stomach shifting into curiosity and intrigue, a feeling that life, despite its pain and uncertainty, could still surprise her with moments of unexpected joy, laughter, and warmth. And as they sat, she noticed how his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how his voice had a gentle cadence that invited trust, how his presence seemed to fill the space with calm energy, and she realized that even before speaking, he was reminding her that connection could exist without rush, without pressure, and that it could be tender, subtle, and deeply meaningful. And their conversation began slowly, at first polite and careful, but soon they discovered shared interests, shared humor, and a rhythm and dialogue that made her chest feel lighter, her lips curve in ways she hadn't allowed in years, and each laugh, each shared glance, each small story exchanged between them felt like a quiet reclamation of her heart, a small but significant victory against the fear and hesitation that had kept her isolated for so long. And as the evening progressed, Elena found herself sharing memories, thoughts, and even small fears with Daniel, and he listened with patience, warmth, and understanding, never rushing, never judging, allowing her to feel safe while also feeling alive, a combination she had almost forgotten existed. And the thought made her heart swell with gratitude for her son, Lucas, who had encouraged her, supported her, and reminded her of her own worth. And she realized in that moment that this meeting was not just about Daniel, not just about new romance, but about her reclaiming herself, her heart, her ability to trust, to feel, and to hope again. And as they stepped out into the night afterward, the street quiet, lights reflecting softly off the pavement, Elena felt a sense of anticipation mingled with calm, a recognition that this encounter was the first of many small steps toward a fuller life, toward joy, toward the tender possibility of love. And she looked at Daniel, noticing the gentle way he smiled, the way his presence felt steady, comforting, yet exciting, and she realized that the warmth she felt in her chest, the flutter of excitement in her stomach, was not just attraction but also relief, the relief of finding someone who could meet her where she was, who could accompany her in a rhythm of trust, understanding, and shared laughter. And she felt herself leaning slightly toward him, their hands brushing briefly, sending a spark through her that was at once new and familiar, a sensation she hadn't felt in years, and the realization that she could feel this way again, that her heart could respond, that she could allow herself to long and hope, filled her with quiet joy and wonder. And she thought of Lucas waiting at home, and a smile spread across her face, knowing that he had been the gentle force that had nudged her into this possibility, that he had reminded her that life, despite its shadows, could offer light, and that she was deserving of it, deserving of warmth, deserving of connection. And as they walked slowly through the streets, exchanging stories and laughter, Elena felt a sense of completeness, a harmony in her chest that had been absent for too long, a tender acknowledgement that happiness was not only possible but within reach. And she allowed herself to imagine a future where these small moments of joy, trust, and connection could grow into deeper companionship, a shared life marked by laughter, comfort, tenderness, and mutual respect. And she realized that the journey she had feared, the journey back into life and love, was already underway, unfolding gently yet persistently, guided by her courage and the love of her son Lucas, who had reminded her of her worth and capacity for joy, and she felt tears prick at her eyes, not of sorrow but of gratitude and quiet awe, as she recognized that life had given her a second chance, a chance to love again, to trust again, to feel deeply again, and she vowed silently to herself to embrace it fully, to step into it with open arms and an open heart, allowing herself to experience connection, laughter, and tenderness without fear, knowing that each small step, each shared glance, each gentle touch, could become a thread in a tapestry of new beginnings, and she realized that her life, once shadowed by grief and loneliness, was now infused with light, warmth, and hope, and as they reached her doorstep, Daniel's eyes met hers, full of kindness, curiosity, and promise, and she felt her heart leap with the realization that this evening, this small but significant encounter, had changed her, had reminded her that love could return in unexpected ways, that life could surprise her, and that she was ready to embrace it, fully, openly, and with courage. And as she turned to Lucas, who was watching from the doorway with a shy, knowing smile, she felt a surge of gratitude, relief, and profound love, understanding that the words he had whispered that night, the gentle encouragement he had offered, had not just broken her, had not just shaken her world, but had built a bridge to something brighter, something tender, something alive. And as she closed the door behind her, the night air still cool around her, Elena felt her heart light, her spirit lifted, and a quiet, thrilling anticipation for the days to come, the love to explore, and the happiness she had almost forgotten was possible. And she knew, with a certainty that made her chest swell, that life had begun again, and she was ready, finally ready, to step into it with courage, trust, and an open heart, carrying both the lessons of the past and the hope of the future. And as she watched Daniel walk away with a gentle wave and a smile, and Lucas peeking from behind the doorway, she felt the warmth of possibility settle in her chest, a quiet, unwavering reminder that love, life, and happiness were not lost, only waiting to be discovered again. One step at a time, and tonight, the first step had been taken, forever changing the rhythm of her heart, her home, and her life.